Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, this is Conquer Double One, and I am back. It's been a while since I did a last YouTube video recording, and I hope you all miss me, because I sure have. Yeah, right. Well, recently, or rather, very recently, there's been a pretty severe case of haze that covered the entire country of Singapore, and breathing is kind of, well, difficult. Not good for the health and all, thanks to some forest fires, unfortunately. But nonetheless, we should move on to beloved Vanguard, Cardfight Vanguard game. So today I'll be sharing a few things. As you can see, for some of you who might already recognize this, this is the starter card, a grade 0 for the clan Murakumo. And I will be showing you a deck build, a test deck build that I've been planning for the past few days. In this case, it's a hybrid build with Murakumo involved. So without further ado, let's get this show on the road. First up, as I said, this is the starter card, where if a Murakumo unit, let me try that again. When you actually write a Murakumo onto this card itself, you can call it your rearguard circle, and the skill is it's activate skill that I can put it a soul charge to my. Oh no, it's not soul charge. I actually put it to the bottom of my deck. I can choose one Murakumo from my hand, call it to a rearguard, and at the end of my turn, that is, return that called card to my hand. So in a sense, it helps a lot in initial rushing, or maybe I can just, but then again, as a grade 0 5k booster, it is still a pretty decent booster itself, so it's not bad. Next up is the trigger setup, and since Murakumo was only introduced in BT05 for the English community, there is only 16 standard triggers for it. But I have which is the 4 heals, draws, stands, and crits for Murakumo. But in addition, with the grade 0 lineup, I added 2 more cards. There we go. Now, for some of you who might not be able to recognize this, which I'm not surprised, these 2 cards are from the clan, or rather from the discontinued clan, Nubatama. Nubatama, it was just a bit of a history flashback here. Nubatama is a clan that was first introduced in BT01, in the first initial release of Cardfight Vanguard, and Nubatama is a very unique clan. For that set, only 4 types of cards were released for the Nubatama clan. This is one of the 4. But Bushiroad felt that the clan's gameplay mechanics, may very well upset the entire game itself, and therefore they actually discontinued any design for this particular clan. Which I applaud them for their wisdom. I personally feel that yes, if it actually developed even more, we might see some major upset. But recently, the CEO of Bushiroad have announced that the clan Nubatama will be making a comeback and will be released in the next Japanese booster release, BT13, together with the new clan Link Joker. As some of you might already notice, Link Joker is the next new clan, following Aqua Force in the 2nd season of the anime series. Link Joker is the new arch nemesis in the 3rd season of the Cardfight Vanguard anime series, and I'm really looking forward to that. But regarding about what Link Joker is, that will be shared at probably at a later time. But for now, this is the another clan. This is the 2nd clan in this Murakumo hybrid deck. And what does this card do? Let me switch hands again. This card, right, is a grade 0, 10k guard, 5k power booster, Stealth Beast Hagakure. If I use this card to guard, place this in the guard circle, and if I have a Nubatama Vanguard, and if my card, if the number of cards in my hand is less than my opponent, I may counter +1, and I can force my opponent to discard 1 card from his or her hand. Now, it's not up to me to decide which card to discard. It is up to my opponent. So that gives them a slight, control over their hand contents. But nonetheless, this is quite a tricky card to use. So let me just put this aside. So just a brief note. This deck, as I mentioned, is a test hybrid deck. I just thought about it just like a few days ago, and I was like trying it out, playing against myself, and it's kind of seems to work, but I will need to continue testing it a bit more before I can get some you know, a good idea on how to actually make this work. But generally, this is my test build, and therefore, if after looking through the entire deck build, you guys thought that there might be some better methods to actually improve it, I'm all ears. I would like to hear as to what you guys would recommend. So nonetheless, back to the topic, and I'm gonna go through my great ones now. Great ones. I have 4 copies of the AK Vanilla, the Stealth Rogue of Silence, Shijimamaru. Right, that's 4 of it. Put it aside. I have 3 copies of the Perfect Guards, the Stealth Beast Leaves Mirage. I have 2 copies of Stealth Beast Leaf Raccoon, which if I boost a if I boost a Murakumo Vanguard, and if my card, if the number of cards in my hand is more than my opponent, I can get an additional 4,000 when it's boosted until the end of the turn, which is pretty decent. And finally, the remaining 4 in my Great One setup is these guys. This is the second Nubatama clan cards from BT01. Now, this card is very interesting. It's and it's pretty decent too. A 7k booster, even by itself, is actually pretty good. Now, if you look at it, the skill states that if I actually boost, let me just focus. There we go. If this attack hits when this card boosts a Nubatama, that means if the Nubatama front rear guard attack hits when this card boosts it, if it hits, I can counter +1 and cause my opponent to drop a card. Of course, the same classic condition remains that my opponent got to have more cards than I do for the effect to take place. It's not focusing, is it? That's odd. But nonetheless, this card is called the Stealth Dragon Dread Master. And we'll just put this to the side. There we go. And then we move on to Grade 2. Grade 2 lineup, here we go. We have 3 copies of the Stealth Beast White Mane. These are damage unflippers. And even if I can't unflip much, at the very least, it is still a decent 9k rear guard or 9k attacking unit. Next, I have 1 copy of the Swift Archer Fushimi. This card is from the EB01 series, the EB01 box extra booster, and this card is supposed to be a special. A special surprise, a special nasty surprise to my opponent, where if I actually write this card over Murakumo for that turn, against the skill that I can attack any opponent unit in the back row or even the front row. I can attack anyone, but only for that turn. So which is why it's only like a good for only a one-time use. And then followed by 3 copies of Stealth Fiend Midnight Midnight Crow. AK, as some of you might already know, the skill allows me that if I actually call this to a Vanguard or Rearguard circle, and if I have a Murakumo Vanguard, I can counter blast 1 and search my deck for the same card and superior call it to a Rearguard and shuffle my deck. And at the end of the turn, put that superior called card back to the bottom of the deck itself. So in a sense, it helps me to launch a nice front attack without using any cards from my hand, and then having them return back to the bottom of the deck so that the opponent couldn't hit those guys. And now the final 4 of my Grade 2 setup, which you might already have noticed or might have guessed, will be the 4 Nubatama cards. These are Grade 2 8k fighters by the name of Stealth Beast Chigasumi. Focus. Let me try again. Focus. There we go. And this card is unique. It has a Vanguard rearguard skill that if it attacks, if the number of cards in my hand is greater than my opponent, this unit gets 3,000 until the end of the turn, which is actually pretty good. So which is why I'm actually trying to mix it up with Murakumo's hand-saving mechanics to try to utilize this card skill. And even if it doesn't, even if, like, let's say my opponent has more cards than I do, then with the power of Dreadmaster, let's say I actually have it boosting Chikasumi, boost, or rather attack and then boost. That's the proper procedure, in case you guys were wondering. And this would actually at least provide a 15k lineup, which is actually pretty not bad. And the wonderful thing is, this card skill can activate upon hitting anything. It doesn't have to be the Vanguard, it can be a rearguard. And this can also cause some discomfort and difficulty to both my opponent's setup as well as his or her hand, which is actually pretty good. Of course, the question is that, or rather the problem also lies that because if I'm going to put this up front like really early, that means that this guy's going to be a target, and it may be a bit difficult for me to guard. And it's and besides, let's face it, Murakumo doesn't have a lot of defensive options other than in its hand. Unlike Tachikaze, which has a lot of defensive options that you do so. But that's enough complaining. Hopefully, with the BT09, there might be some good cards to help out Murakumo, which I know there is. There's the chain ride for Makatsu. For the Makatsu chain ride itself, but I'm still thinking of whether I want to get it. But that's for another time. So finally, for the grade 3 lineup, I have 7 grade 3s. I have 4 copies of Stealth Fiend Kuruma Lord. Now, some of you might be wondering, why shouldn't I use what's the card? Mandala Lord. Yeah, that's right, Mandala Lord as my Vanguard. There's the problem where if on the field there is a non-Murakumo card, Mandala Lord gets a -2k, and that is something I would want to avoid. It's true, Mandala Lord is 11k base card if there's no Murakumo, or rather if there's no Nubatama or non-Murakumo cards on the field itself. But I feel that in order to fully utilize Mandala Lord's skill, I will also need to use the searcher cards to actually find the card itself. So therefore, it's I don't think it's going to help much. So therefore, Kuruma Lord seems to be the next better choice. Now, Kuruma Lord works the same way as Nova Grappler's Mr. Invincible, where at the beginning of my main phase, I have to soul charge 1, and I can choose a card from a damage zone and turn it face up. And it also has a Mega Blast ability, where if it hits in a Mega Blast, I can stand all of my units, which is a very useful skill. It also supposedly it can put a lot of pressure on my opponent themselves. Now my next next 3 cards for my grade 3 lineup, which again you probably guessed is from the Nubatama clan. Now, well, anyway, let me just run you through what this card is. It is a grade 3 single rare card from BTO1. Again, the 4th and the last card, and it has 2 skills. One is that it as a Vanguard, if this card attacks, a Vanguard skill, please do note. And if I have more cards than my opponent, this card gets an additional 3k until the end of the battle, therefore effectively turning it into a 12k by itself, which is actually pretty good. The second skill, though, is what I really want to bring to your attention, is that if this card attacks, if this unit attacks, and I have and if it hits, alright, and if I have less cards than my opponent, I can counter +1 and cause my opponent and force my opponent to drop a card from his or her hand. So here's the strategy, right? Let's say that this is my rearguard, because I would want to avoid putting this as my Vanguard because it's only a 9k. Kuruma Lord was selected because at the very least it has at least 1 more k to its hit points, therefore making it slightly easier to guard. But anyway, this guy, if I actually mix it up with Dreadmaster in the rearguard circle, I'm trying to my best to put it in the rearguard circle as much as I can, right? And I attack with it, then this effectively turns into a 16k lineup, and I can try and I can just hit the rearguard instead. and the opponent will have to think, oh no, am I going to drop a card? Do I actually guard it or do I not guard it? And if the opponent has more cards than I do, then I can actually activate both of these skills, right? Because this boosts it and it hits, and this card also hits as well. And I can activate both of them by counterblasting 2, forcing my opponent to drop 2 cards because both skills activate at the same time, which is pretty cool. But which also presents a problem that because it's a 9K, chances are my opponent would probably want to actually get rid of it. So again, defensive options isn't all that great, but hopefully I can force my opponent to the point that I have to force them to drop the card so much that they have no choice but to go on an endurance battle with me and eventually lose out. So. And besides, Kuruma Lord itself also works well as a rear guard because I can constantly threaten them with the prospect of a Mega Blast. And since the attack is a on-hit attack, which means I can hit any unit inclusive of the rear guards and or vanguards, and as long as it hits, I can Mega Blast and stand all of my units, including the Vanguard. See that? That's so this deck itself is actually meant to try to put a lot of pressure with low numbers, therefore causing them to drop cards and all that stuff. Hopefully causing them to make poor decisions, and at the same time allowing me to rush them early on as well. So there you go. There you have it. This is my test Murakumo Nobatama hybrid deck, and hopefully I can try to make this deck as worthy as possible. So if you got any comments, any suggestions, you think you got any really good ideas, please don't hesitate to let me know. Share them in the comments below this video, and yeah, let's go on this journey to see this deck grow. So thank you for your time, and I hope to see you soon.